the daughter of Yaros, the woman with hemophilia. 22. While Emmanuel was walking with them, one of the community leaders came and prostrated himself before him, saying, my daughter has just died, but if you come and lay your hand on her, then she will live. 23. And Emmanuel stood up, and his disciples and disciplesses followed him. 24. And it happened that a young man-woman hybrid equals part man, part woman, but one of sustainable, strong, pronounced virility, procreative power, who had the flow of blood, equals hemophilia, or bleeding disorder, for 12 years, stepped up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. Explanation. The man-woman was a hybrid being, that is, a dual-gendered man, who probably walked about as a woman and dressed accordingly, but was more of a man than a woman and suffered from hemophilia. According to the detailed investigation by the pure spirit level Arahat Athasata, the viewer of time, it concerned a male-dominant hybrid who was capable of procreation, equals equipped with sustainable, strong, pronounced virility, procreative capacity. According to the description explanation of the Arahat Athasata level, it concerned a bipartite, hermaphroditic, dual-gendered man. 22. She spoke to herself, quote, if only I could touch his garment, I would soon be cured. 26. Then Emmanuel turned around and saw her and said, quote, be comforted. Your trust, certainty that it would help, has helped you. And the man-woman was well from that hour on. Explanation. Solely her trust in Emmanuel and her faith that she would be cured if she touched his garment activated her self-healing powers. Consequently, she was healed from her hemophilia from that hour on. The same phenomenon also occurred with the Russian Tsar's son, with whom the bleeding disorder could be stopped at least intermittently by the help of Rasputin. It was therefore not Emmanuel's touches that were able to heal the sick, but on the one hand, his suggestive consciousness powers and his suggestive words, as well as his ability of hypnosis, which were ever present in him. And consequently, these were also effective if another human being attuned themselves in the certainty of the fact that he or she would be freed from his or her suffering. In touching Emmanuel's garment, or he himself physically, uncertainty and hope had the same effect as, for example, the laying on of hands, etc., by the so-called spiritual healers, healeresses, through whom human beings are cured of an illness, or it is temporarily alleviated. The woman was therefore not healed by the touching itself, but by her own suggestive consciousness powers and her faith, which is equivalent to a certainty, through which she activated her self-healing powers and thereby freed herself from her illness. The healing, which occurred not only through the touching of Emmanuel's clothing, stirred up the human being's belief far and wide that his powers were of a divine nature. 27. And when he came into the community leader's house and saw the pipers in the turmoil, lamenting for the dead of the people, who were mourning and lamented, that the community leader's maiden lay there motionless, and they assumed she was dead. Then he touched her and looked at her, and then he spoke. 28. Depart, because the maiden is not dead, but is sleeping in insignificance, faint. And they laughed at him. But after the people were driven out, he entered and held out a smelling salt, and stimulated her breath. And the maiden awoke. And he took her by the hand and spoke, I order you to get up and walk. And the maiden stood up and walked. And soon the news of this spread through the entire land, in which case, however, it was strongly reported that Emmanuel had awakened the maiden from the dead. Explanation. The maiden was not actually dead. Rather, she only lay there in faint. And when Emmanuel came near to her and let her inhale the smelling salt, the faint powerlessness faded, and she soon woke up, stood up, and walked around. A blind man and a mute. 31. And as Emmanuel left and continued on from there followed him a blind man who, after an evil mishappening, could not see any more, because he evermore constantly crampfully closed his eyes. And he cried, O Master, you son of wisdom and knowledge, who can use the power of your spirit, consciousness, take pity on me. And as he arrived at his house, the blind man stepped up to him, and Emmanuel spoke, Do you have confidence that I can do this? And he answered, Yes, Master. 38. Then he touched his eyes, saying, Be it done to you according to your trust and according to your will. Open your eyes and see. 34. And he opened his eyes in an arduous manner, and he could see again. 35. Then Emmanuel urged him, saying, See to it that no one learns what happened to you. 36. However, the man went out and spread the news of him and of the happening throughout the land. And he told it in such a wise as if he had been truly blind. So the people believed him. Explanation. The blind man was not truly blind. Rather, he suffered from a severe shock from psychical disturbances, whereby he crampedly held his eyes closed in his grief, his anxiety, and in his confused state. Consequently, he could not see any more. He trusted Emmanuel, and his certainty that he would cure him of his suffering immediately led to the recovery of his eyesight. This happened when he arduously opened his cramped eyelids, when Emmanuel said to him that he could see again if he trusted in this. 37. After the man had left, it happened that they brought to him a man who was mute after a serious mishappening, and also possessed by evil grief. 38. And when Emmanuel deeply, suggestively spoke very long with him and resolved his grief, behold, the muteness was driven out, and soon the man was speaking again. Explanation. The circumstances in relation to the mute are the same as in sentence 34 regarding the blind man. The mute had fallen into deep grief due to a very severe shock because he was not able to cope with the calamity that had befallen him. Thus, a serious psychical impairment was given, by which he had lost his voice. Due to Emmanuel's suggestive speaking with the man, however, this one was back out of his state of shock and speaking again. "39. And the people were amazed, saying, Such things have never been seen in the land. How mighty is this new teaching of Emmanuel about the power of the Spirit consciousness, that it works such miracles. 40. However, the Pharisees said, He drives out the evil spirits demons through their supreme chief of the spirits and demons equals the devil, and he defames God, our Lord. 41. But they discussed among themselves, who is this Emmanuel? For he possesses greater wisdom and thus greater knowledge than we. 42. His teaching is mightier and truer than ours, so he endangers us. 43. We must act so that he will be seized, so that he will suffer death. The great harvest. 44. And Emmanuel went about in many cities and villages, taught in their temples and taught the mystery of the creation and of the laws of the nature, so that the spirit consciousness could attain mightiness. 45. He taught about the spiritual consciousness-based realm within the human beings and healed many illnesses and thus many infirmities with deep words and with herbal drinks and herbal ointments. 46. And when he saw the suffering among the people, he took pity on them, for they were spiritually in consciousness languishing, dried up and scattered like a flock of sheep without a shepherd. 47. Then he spoke to his disciples and disciplesses, who accompanied him in large numbers. The harvest is great, but there are few laborers, that it may be brought in. For explanation. With the harvest is great, but there are few laborers, that it may be brought in. It is declared that with regard to the teaching of truth, teaching of spirit, teaching of life, and therewith also regarding the creational natural laws and recommendations, there are very many truth unknowing human beings who are to be instructed in this respect, equals the harvest. But there are far too few disciples and disciplesses who are suitable for this great task and also willing to take on the effort and to spread the instructions, so that the ones instructed may turn to the teaching and to the laws and recommendations, equals that the harvest may be brought in. 48. Seek and hold edification in your spirit consciousness, that more laborers will be found for the harvesting. 49. And so it came to pass that laborers for the harvest were found, who crowded around Emmanuel to become disciples and disciplesses. I hope you like this reading of chapter 9, and have a great night in Salome.